Hello, welcome to Earth Day. Well, welcome to the virtual tour of SoCal's first living building project, which we're really excited about. We obviously would have loved to have invited everyone down to Santa Monica to be here for a big celebration and tours of the building and all of that, but things are different. So we are really excited to be working with USGBC-LA, West Side branch of which I'm a part, yay, to bring the first virtual tour, as Ben mentioned. So thank you all for joining. We really appreciate you spending some time on Earth Day with us. As you can see on this slide, buildings like this, as all buildings, take a big team and take a really dedicated team. So we've got some, I just want to call out everybody because the team has been phenomenal. It's the only way you can get high performing buildings done. And I just appreciate every single person on this list. Joe Courtyard and Miriam Mojdahi from Frederick Fisher and Partners. They were the architects on the project. Jesse Buckmaster and Joshua Nelson from Hathaway Dinwiddie, the general contractor, total rock stars. We've got Kathleen Hetrick and Julian Parsley from Borough Happel that did MEP and sustainability consulting for the project and have been amazing. And Jenny Zell from our landscape designer, which is Abe MIG. So Living Building Challenge, we'll go through it a little bit. I'm just going to do a quick kind of presentation. Obviously, we're here in Santa Monica, right? Santa Monica has been at the forefront of sustainability for a while, right? Our first sustainable city plan was in 1994, so 25 years, which is, you know, an awesome feat in and of itself. There's some stats up there as well of being water self-sufficient by 2023 and being carbon neutral on or before 2050. Right, we have some very lofty goals to continue into our next quarter century, and not to be, you know, overlooked, but continuing that inspirational and aspirational trajectory that we have. It was to be the first municipality to construct a living building. We also took this on, right, to encourage others to do this. It's not just, yay, Santa Monica, you did this, good job, pat on the back. It's more, what regulatory hurdles can we take down? Can we show people how to do this? Can we take on those burdens as a local government and show the world that every building can and should be a living building? Or we would hope to work on that regenerative track. Next slide. So for us, right, looking at our carbon profile, buildings use 30% of that. So that was one of the big drivers for us. Next slide. Aaron, these are going to go fairly quickly. And a little bit about Living Building Challenge, right? There's code minimum buildings, there are green and high performance buildings, there's sustainable buildings, and then there's regenerative buildings. That's where the Living Building Challenge resides. It's based on petals, so it's based on a flower, as you can see what the petals are, and the challenge says you have to achieve all of them. So there's 21 imperatives, depending on which, you know, rating level you're in under. And so that's sort of a little bit about that. So to orient you as to where we are, right? Historic City Hall is that U-shaped gray in the middle, and then you'll see the City Services Building is, let me just explain. This has always been called the City Services Building, but now that the building is being put into service, it's City Hall East. So this building sits just to the east of Historic City Hall and does touch it on both ends. So that's what you're seeing in this site plan. You can see here, Olympic kind of runs diagonally to the right and Main Street runs diagonally to the left. You can see where the building is situated. A little bit about the building, right? It's 50,000 square feet. It's about 242 staff. We have an EUI of 24, which is amazing. We have solar, and we're going to take you through, right? The team is actually going to talk about each of their pieces, and you're going to get to hear from the experts that, you know, have spent the better part of 5 years on this project for most of them, which is also amazing, right? We have 40,000 gallon cistern and all of those things. The big reason why the city did this was for a fiscally responsible reason, right? We were paying for leases in 3 different locations. And as you can imagine, in Santa Monica, leases are very expensive. So by consolidating and making it easier for our community members to get their work done, to get the services that they need, they can now come all to City Hall and do all of that business. And we'll get to take a look at that public counter as well. So that not having to pay the leases was a very big financial reason. to do the building in and of itself. We're going to show some of the pictures, the renderings that the architects put together for us. You can see the city services, that glassy building kind of poking out behind City Hall there. And then this is a look from Olympic and Mazatlan, sort of if you're standing at the Civic Center parking structure, what the building will look like. And so, or building looks like, I should say. We're already doing that. So some unique things about the building, right? We're the first in California to be able to drink our rainwater, which is awesome. And we'll get to see that water treatment plant. We are the first in Southern California for composting toilets. So while composting toilets, or foam flush toilets as we call them, have been in existence for more than 40 years. They're the first in Southern California here, and we'll get to take a look at those. And then our edible landscape, which we also have some beautiful flower arrangements that our landscape architect did. So we'll get to take a look at what that means as well. For our energy systems, right, there's the number one is to reduce your loads, right? And our HVAC strategy, our MEP engineers will talk about. We have photovoltaics on the roof, and then using those low energy systems first before you turn on those active systems. Then our water strategy, the water strategy on this building is really exciting. I mentioned the rainwater to potable. That also ties into our resiliency strategy, right? That this building can produce water that is potable no matter what is going on, which is really exciting, right? If there's a water main break, that doesn't necessarily affect us, which is awesome, as right, we're dealing with one type of global event right now, but California is known more for earthquakes generally. So our rainwater to potable is really exciting. Rainwater recycling for our landscape, and then right, a net zero water strategy for drought conditions, and I'll leave that to the engineers to talk about in depth. And then again, our foam flush toilets, which this building is also an essential services building. So not only is it a living building, it is also one that provides, right, it's structurally more stable, its MEP is designed with some extra in there. So when we talk about the financials of the building, those things play a role, right? It's a very constrained site. Being the first, we had to work very hand in hand with the county to get things through, and that took a longer time to do so. And it's just really exciting that this team was able to pull this all together. And obviously the foam flush toilets were a big piece of this, which our engineers will talk about. So just a little bit of a layout, right? There's a 40,000 gallon cistern underneath the building. Our basement, which we'll go see as well, has all of the mechanical systems for the building, as well as showers and lockers for staff. Then the first floor, which we'll spend a good bit of time on, we'll go see the outside courtyard and the public counter, and we'll walk through those spaces, as well as some of the conference rooms, which I'm sitting in. Then levels 2 and 3 are the office floors for staff. They are almost identical, so we'll walk level 2 here and go through materials and some other things there. And then we'll just kind of go quickly through some of the renderings, and then you'll actually get to see these spaces on the tour when we're going through. So the public counter, the workspace, the break area, one of the meeting rooms. And then wanted to pause on the red list. One of the things that we really appreciate about Living Building Challenge and all of the work that USGBC is doing around materials, right? Getting the worst in class chemicals out of our buildings. So not only from their extraction and those sorts of things, but you know, during manufacture, install, and then the occupants that are in the building. And health and wellness is center to this building, of the people coming in to visit and do business with us, as well as the staff here, right? Having access to fresh air and daylight has a positive impact on psyche and all those things. And so with this building, and we know things are, right, very uncertain out in the world, but the air changes per hour in this building are phenomenal, right? It's got a really pleasant, just air quality in general. We are actually monitoring for air quality as well, so we can continue to deliver clean, healthy air, clean, healthy water, and be a model for everyone in the community when they come here. This is a public building. It's a little bit different than some of the other office buildings that have been done that are more on the private side. So we're really excited to share this with everyone. A little bit of the timeline. Everyone always wonders, well, when did this start, right? And I know there are folks on the call that were here before me, and I applaud you and thank you for all of your work, because this could not have happened without you. Right, feasibility started in 2014, And here we are 6 years later. You can start to see, right, for design and construction and approvals, permitting and notice to proceeds, and all the way over at the end. I know it's cut off on my screen, but here we are at a grand opening, and it's taking a different form than any of us ever expected, but we're so excited to share it with 194 people. So thank you for joining us. The slides can be available. We're fine with sharing those. And then obviously we have our emails with everyone. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Erin so she can explain how the tour is going to work. And then I'm going to get set up at the first location. So I'll see you in a minute.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Erin Hammett, and I'll be the host walking you through and spotlighting things along the way. Right now, I know that we have an attendee from Shanghai, China, so that might be the furthest viewer tuning in. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, but especially those that are very far away. So I am one of the co-chairs of the USGBC-LA West Side branch, and we're super excited to have you on the West Side with us in this virtual tour. So let's wait for Amber to get to where she needs to be. And let me check this chat box. Let's see. I want to encourage everyone, if you have questions along the way, that we have a team of people, including myself, that we're going to be monitoring the chat box. So please enter your questions and we'll try to answer them, and I'll direct you to the project team member who can answer them. And let's see, just waiting for Amber.
Can you guys hear me okay?
There you are. Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So, welcome to City Services. We are standing on Olympic and Mazatlan. We're looking back at the building. Hopefully you guys can see. We're going to walk down the stairs as if you were coming to visit us. You can see the address of the building. Our signage is in. This is the south entrance. So the main entrance of City Hall is still in historic City Hall. But we anticipate that if folks know that they're coming here to do a specific part of business, that they would be welcome to use this entrance, which is really exciting. As I mentioned, this has been a building a long time in the making, and there was a lot of people. Make sure the door closes behind me. So now we're in the building. We're standing in this front area. Level 1 is really where our public interface will be. These conference rooms that you're looking at is where we would meet with the public when we're having meetings and things of that sort. Done, right? Because of COVID, we are really close to being done, but social distancing makes it, you know, a challenge. So it is really, really close to done, which is exciting. So we're going to continue walking through this front area and out to the courtyard, where we will have our first speaker talk about that. You can see the public art, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then out here, there we go. So get to the presentation. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so the next person that we're going to be spotlighting is, first we're going to go to Joe Courtyard from Frederick Fisher and Partners, the managing partner, to talk about design. Joe, I think you might be on mute. Here he is. Hi, Joe. You're on mute. I think we might be having a little technical difficulty. I'll hand this over to,
Do you want, is Miriam on, or do you want me to do it?
I was gonna just go to Jenny Zell
Jenny.
from Abe
Okay.
MIG to talk. She's a senior landscape architect. Jenny, do you want to go first while Joe gets his audio working?
Sure. And Joe, look in your maybe left-hand corner of your screen for unmute. But in the meantime, we'll talk about the courtyard. And so the landscape design for the courtyard really takes its clues from its context, the architectural context. We have, as Amber pointed out, the city hall is on one side, the new building is on the other side, and it has a very formal order to it, and that's where we established the order for the courtyard that we were just walking through. And that courtyard serves as a waiting room for both City Hall and I guess we're calling it City Hall East now, I just learned. So it's a waiting room for both of those. And one of the main elements you saw in there were the palm trees. And that sort of orthogonal grid of the palm trees sets up that order referencing the building, but it also gives us day one a kind of rooftop to that outdoor waiting room. And the landscape underneath the, the ground cover and the shrubs, so the reason why they were selected is first that they were either edible or medicinal, and those plants were easily harvestable without damaging the plant itself. And so we have tangerines. We're looking at some tangerines right now. There was a lot of them early this winter that we were able to eat. And on the other, below that, those ground covers, we have salvias, sages to eat. And really, I just wanted to mention too, we're in a Mediterranean climate here in Southern California, and luckily a lot of those herbs come from the Mediterranean region that we eat, and you're going to find those here in the landscape. And we're looking at some of our first harvest here, that image. We've got peppermint, pelargonium, we've got bay leaves, we've got, the harvest plan is exciting. And a couple of things I want to mention too, leadership roles for Living Building Challenge project is one is scrubbing out the project of our red listed projects. And so for landscape, was PVC. We didn't use any PVC. We switched to HDPE, and the irrigation contractor was certified in that, and hopefully move the market to be using more HDPE for irrigation throughout the region. So there's a lot of exciting things with the landscape, and there's a great harvest plan. And you can ask me questions if you want to know more.
Hi, Jenny. There is one question so far. Did we bring in large live trees?
Oh yeah. So those palm trees you see there are large. They're male date palms, and they're alive. And you might be wondering why we used male date palms. And one of the reasons we went with the male date plants is because female fruiting plants, they proposed some of a danger for harvesting. They have thorns, and we just didn't want them. So they'll pollinate all the ladies around the area and provide their ecological function that way. But in the courtyard, there's no dates. So yeah, lots of live trees.
And one more question, thank you. What percentage were you targeting under urban agriculture? And can you describe the components of the harvest plan?
Sure. So we were at 10% of the FAR. So our total goal was 4,000, our total square footage was 4,429 square feet. We're a little over that. And so you're seeing the courtyard here, but there's also landscape where Amber just was along Olympic. There's also landscape along Fuji. And in those areas, we have pomegranate trees. We've got an avocado tree. We've got pineapple guava. We've got bay, so that you can harvest all year long. If you make gumbo, that's terrific for it. We've got echinacea will come up late summer. That's wonderful for tea. We've got violets, you know, which are terrific. They take some shade. They can be harvested now for spring. You can make a cake and put violets on it. I don't know. Is that enough? There's a lot.
That was great. Thank you. All right, I'm going to try to pull Joe back in. Let's see. Hi, Joe.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Joe Courtyard from Frederick Fisher and Partners. I'm representing a really large team in our office. Mariam is joining later in the call. And we really wanted to start off by thanking the city of Santa Monica and our partners. It took a really enlightened client, I think, to get to this point. Amber, you mentioned 2014. We actually started competing for this project in 2013 when we formed a design build partnership with Hathaway Dinwiddie. And for those looking on this right now, that partnership between the design and the construction team is absolutely critical to get to this point. The lessons learned, there's been a number of seminars and discussions about that, is really important. And the city is a willing client from the city council to the city manager, Susan Klein's leadership, Miriam Mulder early on in the project, what Amber has poured her heart and soul into this building, and our design partners from Burrow Happold, John Zinner, our structural engineers, etc. This is absolutely a team effort. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to go over the design of the building. And I thought of 4 principles that as a firm we thought about. And initially, and it's really interesting how prevalent it is today, is the word wellness. What is it going to be like to be inside the building? To basically provide an ideal environmental quality for the people that work in the building many hours a day and for the visitors of the building, where city staff and visitors can come together in a really natural setting. And for us, it's as much about a way of life and being comfortable in the building as it is about a techie building. There are a lot of advanced building systems, but that's meant to kind of be in the background. And so it's really this interesting synergy between the two. The second point is community access. And by that, we mean the transparency of the building. It is a glass building, but it's glass in a very, very subtle way. The way it mirrors the city hall, and then providing visual access into the building so you can see government at work. Santa Monica, I think, is famous for the blend of government and access. And this idea that was mentioned earlier by Jenny, that this courtyard is really seen as the gathering spot of both buildings, where the city hall, the original city hall, which we really consider the crown jewel of Santa Monica, and the constituents of that and the staff in this building that previously were in 3 or 4 buildings in downtown Santa Monica can come together for collaboration, convening, etc. Really, really important. And the third point is context. So the respect of the existing city hall. When we went to, Planning Commission and Landmarks Commission, we're concerned about the scale of the new building relative to the existing building. The idea that the building being glass, it could be relatively neutral. On the relationship on the kind of modest loft-like building. Even the original building is relatively simple inside. And so trying to respect the idea of being part of the Santa Monica Civic Center, which is a really important point. And last but not least, resilience and sustainability. So what does resilience mean today, literally today? And that's a point that I think we're really interested in, how the design of the building is going to accommodate the changing workplace, which was there. So for a point of information, there are no offices in this building. Everybody is in an open working environment. We are spaced, we believe, to provide safe and healthy. You didn't mention Amber, but Amber is working in the building today, and it is an essential building, and that has a lot of implications. some of the things that I think are critical is the natural light. Because the building is relatively long and narrow, we're able to get cross ventilation, we're able to get natural light. We work really closely with our partners at Borough Apple. Julian, I think, is going to talk about this. The innovation of composting toilets, how the systems work together, then the relationship between urban agriculture, and maybe most importantly, and I'd like Mariam to follow up a little, is the critical nature of the materials, what it took for the design team, the construction team in the city to eliminate red list materials and to make the building and the materials and the people that work making and assembling materials make it safe for them. So that's my quick overview.
Thank you so much, Joe. I don't see any questions right now in the chat, but if some come in, I'll point them your way.
Right.
So Amber is now going to take us to
I'm going to take us to the public counter. Yep.
We're going to look at the counter for public services as well as public art.
All right, so here we are. Assume that you've come to City Hall to do some business and you went to the main entrance of City Hall. You've come through that beautiful courtyard and through this door that's right in front of us. What you're greeted with is a light-filled space. It's a wonderful space to be in. I wish there was some better way to convey it than even just in video, but to stand here is just amazing. The light quality, the air quality. As you can see, we have 16 counter positions that have seating for the public to come and join and to do their business here. I mentioned there's 3 different lease areas that we're all seeing customers in different ways or different clients in different ways, and they're now all in one place. So if you're coming here, and I don't know how many of you have done business with the city of Santa Monica and you've come for a planning review or worked with mobility, you need to get a business license, instead of having to go to a bunch of different places, now you get to come here and do all of those things at once, which is wonderful. You can pay a utility bill, you can get your rebates from OSC, and as you look to the left, I will stop in a moment, is our public art. So Santa Monica is a 1% for public art city. And so the public art of this building, and I'm gonna turn slowly, hopefully nobody gets nauseous. That's our Hvac there. But as you can see, this art piece, as I walked by, and I'm gonna try and get as much of it as possible, this is the Santa Monica sky. So from very early in the morning until that evening dusk light, that's what this light painting is. Our artist is Susan Nardulli's studio. And they've, oh geez, the gimbal does not like how heavy my phone is sometimes. So apologies for that little twisty turn that you just went on. So the public art is really, you know, not only is this a way to bring art into everyone's life, which is, there we go. Sorry about that again. Nope, it doesn't like something. So, always fun, right? You gotta learn on the fly. So yeah, so this is where our public comes to get business done. We are really excited to be able to offer these services once we are, you know, back up and running fully. And the city's obviously closed right now, but we are ready for business when we are all back open and in these unusual times, in a beautiful space and with beautiful art for everybody to be able to enjoy. So now I'll turn it over to, I believe, Josh Nelson. To talk about, oh no, go ahead, sorry, Erin.
There's one, yeah, you have one question. Can you please describe the interior finishes as you're walking through?
Oh, sure. So this is finished. We do get some people that ask that, right? We have an exposed ceiling, exposed concrete ceiling, exposed concrete floors. We have unfinished columns. Those are all intentional. It's sort of a, and I think Miriam will talk a little bit about this when she does her piece as well. So it is intentional. We have quartzite as our countertop, and I know Jessie, who is going to talk about Red List, right? She has vetted over 1,000 products in this building and has done an amazing job at keeping us all informed and what can come in and what does not. We've been working with our furniture partners as well to deliver carbon neutral fabrics, and some of the chairs deliver carbon neutral as well. And then our glass, Walters and Wolf was the one that did the wall system, the frit pattern, which I believe others are going to talk about the system of that. We have blinds. Let's see if I can get this to work. We have blinds that will go up and down to help with shading and things of that sort throughout the day. And if there's something specific, I mean, we have a little bit of acoustical ceiling tile to help with sound. But if there are other specific questions about materials, either ask now or wait for Jesse or Miriam.
If more come in, I'll let you know. But
Okay.
there is a question about why the chairs are actually fixed to the floor.
Well, so it's something called a jury base. When we see, right, so we've left areas for accessibility so that people can pull up no matter what your abilities are, whether you're in a chair or a walker or in a chair or seated at one of these chairs here. They're grouped in ones and twos depending on which counter position they're at, and largely it's so that they don't move around, right? Being in a public facility, right, some of our chairs are able to be moved, the waiting furniture, but we wouldn't want someone to come to an appointment and then not have a chair where they were sitting and then have to have staff go run and find one. So largely they're bolted down so they don't move.
Okay, and then if any of these questions you want to defer to a speaker later, just let us know. But there's two more that came in.
Okay.
Can you describe the queuing system for the public? And then is there sound masking, and how are the acoustics with the hard surfaces?
Sure. So I just moved a little bit so you can see our Hvac in the right-hand corner there. It is largely the same thing that if you were coming to Santa Monica before this building was opened, right? It's a Hvac system. You say what service you want to do and it spits out a number, but it also has the ability to text you. So instead of having to sit and stare at a screen and wait for B12 to be called, you can actually enjoy our courtyard. You could be out front in the South Plaza. You could be in the front of City Hall in Ken Genzer Square. You could be in City Hall lobby, right? You could be other places on the campus. So you get a text message or a phone call, or if you choose not to do that, then you print a ticket or you can watch the screens. There's screens in City Hall as well as in City Hall East. As for the hard surfaces, this has been a long discussion, and yes, there is a sound masking system. We have added extra fabric and divider screens and things in the staff work areas, which you'll see when we walk those floors on level 2, to help cut down on that. But what we've also done is for folks, right, part of this is total workplace, which is a phrase that we use to talk about how government is changing, right? What does a 21st century government look like and feel like, and what does that do? And part of that is knowing that if you're going to be on the phone for longer than what our team, right, our staff thought 2 minutes was about as long as you should be talking out loud before you go into a conference room. But we have provided a seat in a conference room or other space away from your work area, 1-for-1. So every workstation has a seat somewhere else that they can go and have those conversations, which is a dramatic amount more than what we currently have. I think it was 3 times more than what Historic City Hall has. So we're trying to get people to work a little differently and think a little differently. Also, right, one of the silver linings of having the stay-at-home orders is that a lot of us are learning to telework, and that you don't have to actually be at your desk. You can get up and move, or you can work from home on a day that you need to have that heads down and focused work. So, right, looking for silver linings all the places that we can. This was one that training and teaching staff that getting up and moving is a good thing. And if someone is being loud, 1, talk to your coworkers, but 2, you can get up and move, and that's actually really good for your body and health and wellness.
Thank you so much, Amber. Okay, now we're going to move on to talk about curtain walls and construction. And I believe Joshua from Hathaway Dinwiddie will be speaking now.
Hello, and thank you for having us today. We really appreciate this opportunity to celebrate this occasion with the city, as well as our design partners and with all of you. One thing that, with regards to construction, we actually broke ground in December of 2017, with starting with some demolition and then progressing with some utility relocations, and then spent the next months with regards to excavation. with a basement and then 3 stories above. But what you're seeing is with this, the building is large open spaces, a lot of natural light coming through from the curtain wall itself that has both operable and manual vents throughout. The operable vents that are tied to our building management system and a weatherometer that will open automatically to allow a lot of cross ventilation, natural ventilation. Being so close to the ocean gives you an opportunity to take advantage of those sea breezes close by and those temperate climate. Also, allows a lot of natural light into the space. We have some minimal cloud ceilings, which also include, there's a lot of nuances to this, seen and unseen, that help contribute to the living building certification that this project will be seeking. There's a phase change material as well to help absorb some of that heat that may be generated throughout the space during the day and then dispense it at night. Also to help with your cooling systems, so that you're really trying to take advantage of the climates around and also to reduce that use. One thing within our slabs that did take a lot of coordination amongst the team, we do have a radiant ceiling system and in our deck pours, that's in the deck above on this floor as well as every other floor, that will help also temper that slab and contribute to that reduction use of HVAC ventilation systems throughout and allow you to take advantage still of the climate and create an environment that will, to the occupants, will seem normal to them. There won't be too hot or too cold, but it is something that we're very proud of. There was a lot of coordination involved with JAMA as well as Borough Happold to do that. In our deck cycle, we also had post-tension slabs. So there was a lot of nuances to that you may not typically see in a normal construction sequence.
Joshua, I have a question for you.
Sure.
2 workspaces for each staff sounds like a lot of extra square feet and cost. Can you describe a little more about the square foot per person or anticipated positive trade-offs?
I don't know, Amber, if you would
That
want to take advantage of that one.
Okay.
Or
Sure.
Kathleen?
So it's not 2 full workspaces. Thank you for the question, because it's really good to clarify that. Is everyone has a workspace, and that is a 6x6 workspace, which is a lot smaller than a lot of what our staff is used to working in. So their primary workspace is still that 6x6. What we've done with the conferencing space is that basically those spaces are all shared now. So there are no offices. Maybe I should have led with that. There are no offices. There are no offices that have conference rooms in them that really only that division or department or person gets to use. Everything is a shared communal space for the meeting rooms, and they vary between formal, which would be a table and chair, and then informal, which is more of a couch or living room setup. So it's not that every person has 2 workspaces, it's that there are enough workspaces that are quiet, heads down, more meeting room or conference room area, that every seat, right, every workstation has another seat somewhere else. So that ratio seems to work pretty well. We worked, and I know Frederick Fisher did a lot of research on what is the appropriate ratio to have of primary workspace with other space to go, sort of that communal space. That was what I meant.
And Amber, as I take on this next question, someone's asking if it's possible to walk behind the art screen.
Okay.
And then I believe this one can be for Joshua. How is the building designed and constructed? Or I don't know, maybe it's not. One of our project team members, how is the building designed and construction to prevent viral infections?
So that's one we've had a lot of conversations about. It's Amber, I'll take it because I think it goes to operations. And it is, right? This global pandemic has changed our world fundamentally. The thing that we as a team have discussed with our custodial staff and our building techs and at all levels is that the air quality, the air changes per hour are far higher in this building than any other workplace in the city, certainly. With all of the natural ventilation, those germs and things exit the building. So if you've listened to the CDC, recommendations, wear masks, those sorts of things, if you're in a close confined area, you got to stay further away from folks, and that's where really that high risk of contracting this terrible disease is. So in an open office environment, we're not just saying this is a stale environment and that the air will just sit, which is what happens a lot of time in places. This is actually, you're going to have a lot of air movement, but we're going to be taking it very seriously, and we're going to be adjusting and adapting just like everybody else. We're looking at how to use social distance, Luckily, our stations are 6 feet plus 3-inch panels, so we're just outside of that 6-foot range. But can we space folks out? We've increased with custodial. We've been working with them to wipe down things more frequently, more often, and different types of spaces that maybe they hadn't been doing as much previously. So we're going to figure this out, but we're going to figure it out together and follow the county guidelines and what things that are happening at the state level, and certainly nationally if things are coming out there, and we're going to be very mindful.
Thank you. One other question, and I think this one actually is for Joshua. Was the radiant tubing embedded in the PT structural pour or a separate pour? And then how deep below the surface is the radiant tubing located?
So we had 11-inch thick decks, 10 inches on the roof, and it was a single pour, which did contribute to a lot of the coordination with structural in terms of spacing away from the tendons themselves, as well as the rebar, and making sure that we were still adhering to those requirements. What you do see is because it's a radiant ceiling, so that tubing is closer to the bottom of the deck for the floor below, and it's about 2 inches from the bottom of the pour.
Thank you. Okay, was there any other comments related to curtain wall and construction before we move on? Next, we're gonna do HVAC strategy, and that'll be presented by Julian Parsley with Burrow Happold Engineering.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be here and be part of this tour. I'm going to talk a bit about the energy strategy and the HVAC systems to achieve that. So for LBC, we have to achieve the net zero energy goal. And, for the density of people that we have in this building, there's 240 people on a 3-story building with a basement. That was certainly pretty challenging. So we've had to work really hard through the planning and the design of the systems to try and achieve that. And I think it really starts with before we got to looking at the HVAC systems, we really worked hard with the city and the architect to get the programming and the layout of the space right. So you can see here all of the open plan space is concentrated where we have the best access for natural ventilation. And you saw on the plans at the beginning, the shadow spaces, which are at the north and the south. So things like the break area are located nearer the freeway, which will be noisier, and other spaces that are going to be more in a hybrid mode of natural ventilation and HVAC are located in those north and south areas of the building where you don't have such great access for natural ventilation. So working that through was incredibly important to get the programming and the layout of the space right, so that we could get the building to operate as passively as possible. The next big challenge really was the facade. You can see on level 1, we've actually got quite a lot of glass. We've got much more vision glass on level 1, where you could see from the courtyard. It was naturally more shaded. And there's less glass, there's less vision glass and more shadow box on areas of the building on the south and on the conference rooms where we actually don't need it. So we were very strategic at putting the vision glass where we really needed it most, where we wanted to bring in more daylight, and more solid elements as you move up the building and move to program areas which don't want it. So that was really important to get the loads down on the building to levels so we could get the passive systems to work. The systems we've layered in a way that try and take advantage of the climate. So you can see the top vents have motorized actuators on them, so they will respond to the temperature in the building and their zones, so that they're open, and through the winter months we should be able to condition the building and ventilate the building purely with natural ventilation. As we move through the seasons into the mid-seasons, Josh mentioned the radiant slab. We can operate that in conjunction with natural ventilation. So it might be in the 70s, and the slab will be able to work in conjunction with natural ventilation to extend that range and provide additional tempering and cooling. And then as we get into the peak months, August and really September, when the sun is lower as well, you can see above the clouds, which are acoustic clouds, we have a VAV system. So the money was invested in the windows and the radiant slab, and then we just have a simple VAV system that's able to turn on in the peak summer months for additional conditioning and to keep everyone comfortable. So we do have a dense floor plate, so we couldn't get through the entire year without that top up from that system. We have a remote heat pump that generates the chilled water and the heating hot water, which is remote from the building because we needed all of that space for PV array on our roof. And Josh mentioned as well the phase change material. So the windows will open at night to pre-cool the structure, and anywhere where we don't have exposed concrete, we've pretty much integrated phase change material everywhere we could that was left over in some of the lighter weight construction. And that's really going to help us deal with some of the variability in climate. On a hot summer year, that will help absorb more of the heat gain, and it will also reduce some of our heating energy demands on colder years. So that was kind of a key strategy to help dealing with variability in climate and ongoing global warming. We also some other key things that we did with the systems was really thought very carefully about how we zoned air handling units, how we broke them apart so that we can.
Yeah, go.
So the air handling units are split so that we can run the meeting rooms, which are going to need more active cooling, separate from the air handling units that serve the open plan office areas. So it's very carefully zoned, and spaces that need 24-hour cooling, like the traffic management room, the IT rooms, they have their own VRF systems so that we don't have to run the entire building at once.
Thank you, Julian.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask Amber to head to the composting toilets for our next presentation. But in the meantime, Julian, you do have a question about how is the building heated? Is the radiant slab a changeover heating cooling system, question mark?
It is capable of doing a changeover. We've not set the system up to do most of the work from the slab. We're tempering the slab in the winter so that it doesn't it doesn't feel cold. So we're really trying to temper that slab in the winter to a neutral 70 to 72 and cool it to that range in the summer as well. So the heating, the warm up in the morning is provided from the airside systems.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to move into composting toilets. And I believe Kathleen or Julian, one of you two are going to present that.
I think I'll take it. Oh, okay, Julian. So once we're not upside down, we'll be in the what your usual experience would be, you know, if you were visiting the building, how you would, you know, drink some water and go to the bathroom. So most buildings, most office buildings, your toilet use is about 60% of your potable water needs, right? So that's a lot of water, especially in a drought-prone place like Santa Monica. And our requirements for Living Building Challenge are to become net zero water. So what does that mean for an office building of 250 people? The first thing that we really wanted to do was understand how could we minimize our use of potable water no matter where it was coming from. Composting toilets are really great at doing this. So we're saving 270,000 gallons of water every year by using these composting toilets. They use only a few tablespoons of water compared to, you know, even the most efficient toilets on the market are about a gallon per flush, right? So this is actually using, you know, systems that nature basically intended to handle human waste. So you'd use the restroom just like you normally would in any other building. And instead of a lot of water, you're using a foam flush system. These are Clivus Multrum units, similar to what was used in a lot of other Living Building Challenge projects. Human waste goes down into our composting units. We have 6 very large ones. I think I almost tried trying to fit myself inside one. They're enormous, they're really big. And those fill up with human waste. The leachate or the liquid waste is separated. That can be you know, utilized for nutrient recovery, all the great stuff that you can, you know, what that human waste is good for. And then 90% of the, which is the composting, the dry waste, that's reduced by 90%. A lot of it's just evaporated. So you're using composting kind of similar to what you might have in your backyard. There's going to be a lot of, you know, red wiggler worms in there. They're doing their thing to make sure that we don't have to send 270,000 gallons of waste to the sewer system. So that's just one of the strategies we're using on the water side. That's really interesting. This will be the largest and the first system in Southern California, which is really great for the project. I think as we go down these stairs, we'll go into some of the, as someone was saying on our earlier call, the bowels of the building. So, you know, you think about buildings being used, a lot of square footage is actually dedicated to doing the sustainable thing, especially in a drought-prone area. And like Amber was referring to, all of these systems will be able to be utilized, you know, during emergency situations when essential buildings are really important. So another great thing about the project to achieve net zero is when you think about where Los Angeles or the city of Santa Monica, how potable water is typically delivered, right? Potable water either comes from our groundwater or it comes from imported water, you know, sometimes as far as the Colorado River. So these are the composting systems, right? I said, think about 5'4", you know, woman. you're talking about the scale here that you're using. This is where all the waste goes, but how are we actually generating the potable water that, you know, provides those 2 tablespoons per use? That water is during whenever a rain event happens, rain is getting collected off of our solar PV panels. That water is going down to an underground storage tank. So right below where Amber's walking right now, there's a 40,000 gallon tank that will store the rainwater during the rainy season. It'll be topped up with a well that's located, it's tapping into a water source about 60 feet or so down below. It's not any of the nearby aquifers, so it's a sustainable source of water to minimize during non-rainy times, but that 40,000 gallon rainwater system is really going to be the main source of potable water. That's going to go through a treatment process that, you know, is in accordance with potable water standards that, you know, we had to spend you know, several years on to understand the public health implications of that, really understand how you could do this in a public building. It's a really big feat. It's the first instance in California. Some of the other interesting things about that is since this potable water will be used for drinking, all of that, all where the water falls on the surface area, so the solar PV, all of the PV panels, the different type of roofing material, all of that had to be vetted to meet potable drinking standards. So everything from the, the drainage units, those filters, the gutter systems, all of that, had to be specifically reviewed and tested for potable water safety. And in addition to that, there's also several gray water tanks in here. It's $1,000 or 1,000 gallon a day gray water tanks. All the water from the showers, the Santa Monica city staff likes to bicycle a lot, so all of that gray water from the showers and from the lavatories will also be collected. That water will be used to do the irrigation. That's actually, I think, one of the most interesting parts of this project, and really a huge testament to all of the inner working design features of this building is we gave Jenny the really difficult job of designing an edible agricultural system that was also ecological, native, and adaptive plantings, and could be irrigated with gray water. So that was a really huge step for us, was figuring out how to balance the urban agriculture and ecological habitat designs of the Living Building Challenge with our water goals. So we're actually going to be, we're designing that we'll have an export of gray water. So a lot of the gray water from the showers and lavatories will be exported to nearby buildings to further reduce the potable demand there. All that being said, there's a lot of different steps. There's a lot of resiliency built in to our water systems. And then what Jesse will share in a bit is that you also have the incredibly difficult challenge of understanding how do you do this with redless material, which is one of the key Living Building Challenge pedals that's talked about, and probably one of the more difficult other than the water one in Southern California. So not only are we asking our manufacturers to create these very not all at the time, not typical building systems, but we're also asking them to not include hazardous materials like PVC, or not have benzene and toluene in your mastics and your sealants. So, it's not just the architectural finishes that Miriam will be talking about. It's everything from our piping, our like the duct liners that Julian was talking about, your acoustics, all of that means that you can't have hazardous materials in those systems. And that's great for, the building users, but it also means that there's less demand for PVC in communities in Louisiana and Texas. And as we know, we probably seen in the news, those communities are facing the most pollution. They're the ones most at burden from COVID, right? So Living Building Challenge projects aren't just about, saving water and generating energy. Those are all great things. It really is thinking about health and well-being from the entire community, to the point that Joe was making in the Courtyard, that you really, when you're starting to talk about regenerative buildings, this is not just a single thing you're looking at. So this is a pretty crazy water treatment room. I don't think I've seen that many water treatment rooms on, architectural plans, maybe other than this building, but there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I think there's maybe one instance of PVC on a handle that we had to try to scrape off, but all of this is redless free. It's all working towards this big goal of achieving net zero water, which is really exciting from an engineering perspective and from general city Santa Monica perspective, and I think for all of us on Earth Day. So yeah.
Thank you. So as everybody's seen, we just saw the composting toilets, or foam flush toilets. Then we went into the water room, and then the composting room, and then this is the water room. We heard the water story from Kathleen Hetrick from Burrow-Happold Engineering, and she's a principal there. So thank you, Kathleen. I want to dig in as Amber's walking up to the 3rd floor now. I wanted to dig in a little bit more to the project team and talk about MEP and how you collaboratively design this. If someone would like to jump in.
I'll just quickly say that, as we're walking through the building, it's such a great experience that you can see the lighting fixtures. There's a bunch of, phase change material behind these walls, even from just Burrow-Happold's. We have an office of 70 people in our LA office, and we're working with all the team members in the city of Santa Monica. It took a village to put this project together. We had lighting designers looking through all of the submittals to make sure there was no PVC in the wiring. We had our energy experts understanding how can we get to net zero in a Southern California climate. Plumbing engineers is a huge group, and it was really exciting to see how our company and all the other companies on the call really embraced the challenge and didn't say, oh, I don't want to have to look so hard at materials. And I think that's a really great thing about the Living Building Challenge, is that everyone kind of drinks the Kool-Aid and gets really excited about it. So just a final shout out to the big team at Borough Huppold, that all my friends and colleagues that worked so hard on this building. Only two of us could talk, but just wanted to give a big shout out to everyone. But Julian and the rest of the team can talk about the collaborative nature as well.
Thank you so much. Does Joe or Miriam want to chime in from the design team?
I think that the it takes a village analogy is really important. That the combination of working with the design team and Hathaway Dinwiddie and the supplier vendors and the material was really important. Early on, we did about a 5 or 6 month long feasibility study to understand the level of sustainability that the city was committed to, and early on to understand what it meant. Julian, you would probably remember the meetings we sat through to try to understand what it would take to develop these systems. The water filtration system that Kathleen was talking about, there's no example of that. We spent as much time on the design of that practically as the entire building. The fee dollars are almost equivalent to the cost of the system. And you could go buy a municipal scaled system or design it, or one for your home, but nothing for a 50,000 square foot building. And that's a really important example. And I would say optimistically, the fund that the team went through, getting that permitted at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, it was a serious investment by everybody.
Yes, I remember that achievement. Very exciting. Okay.
Do we have a permit yet, Julian, on the water system?
The water, so once the water division does the testing, the final permit on
right.
the component is
right.
the Santa Monica Water Division do their testing, and then the state will sign it off at that point. So that's the one remaining permit that just happens right at the end.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move into the third floor. And now we're going to talk about, I believe, Amber, you were going to go to the conference room, but it does look like we're in the kitchen right now in the break room, if you want to start there. This is for Amber now.
Yeah, we because we swapped the idea, I think from the break room, I was going to walk back to the conference room and have Jesse talk about the materials.
Yep, go for it.
All right, well, just again, really excited we could have at least a virtual grand opening, even though we can't all be there together. As several of my colleagues have mentioned about the red list materials, this was a very big endeavor. You know, we have a list of, there's about 20 chemical families or materials that, you know, the Living Future Institute did a lot of research into this, established science, peer-reviewed articles that are out there, and came up with what they consider the worst in class that we should really be avoiding, is either for, you know, carcinogens, you know, things that are causing respiratory issues, and then even, as Kathleen mentioned, things like PVC, which are really toxic during the manufacturing process in the communities that those facilities are in, as well as end of life for first responders. And so really looking at a whole life cycle of products, that's why these products are on this list. What that translates into, if you break it down into individual chemicals, is a list of about 800 chemicals that we're trying to avoid. And this applies to everything on the entire project, inside, outside, underground. Every single product had to be vetted in advance. So what we had to do, we spent a lot of time, because this was a design build project, that gave us some time to work together up front to develop a really robust system for, making sure that we could catch everything when we needed to, but also still be somewhat flexible in knowing that there's just a lot of materials that don't get specified, that it just doesn't make sense to list 3 manufacturers in a specification for. There's a lot of kind of accessories that come up that we don't anticipate that get delivered with different products that sometimes even the subcontractor managers don't even realize are part of it until it gets delivered. So we had to develop a really thorough process. And so what this turned into is during the design process, we worked on finding as much as we could in the actual specifications and in the drawings that we could get into the design. Any subcontractors that we were doing budgeting with got some early training. We had really specific language in the specifications about the materials selection process. And then, every subcontractor that bid the project had to agree to Living Building Challenge. And then once they were awarded a contract, every single subcontractor got an email from me requesting an onboarding session. And so I personally gave about a 30-minute training. I think I did it about 45 times, describing the materials process, describing what the expectations were, kind of finding that balance between not going too in the weeds with them, but describing what they need to provide to us and how we would be approving materials. We instituted a pre-submittal process, we called it, where we requested that they gave us just a list of everything they were planning to provide so that we could start doing the research early, well before it needed to be on site. Then we would vet again during the actual product submittals. And then once we got to the actual job sites, all of the field crews were oriented as well. And so everyone has to do a safety orientation their first day on site. So we tacked on an LBC orientation to that. And so just 5-10 minutes, basics, what the actual field crews needed to know was all of your products that you're installing need to have an approved submittal. And waste is another big part of Living Building Challenge. The minimum waste diversion percentage is, for us in version 2.1, was 80%, but in the 90s for things like metal and paper and cardboard. And so we had to make sure that they were following instructions and throwing things away in the correct bins. They signed a form that they went through this orientation, and then they got a hard hat sticker. So we had visuals. Anyone who walked on the job site could look at a hard hat and know that they went through that LBC orientation. And what it did was really get buy-in from everyone involved, and they really took ownership of the project. And we actually had a couple situations where we didn't have the resources to do a full QA QC and check every single product that got delivered to site. But we had a few instances where there was something unexpected, or the manufacturer delivered the wrong product. We were doing some work early on, and the crews realized they needed some spray galv for something. And, one of the guys, or one of the team members said, "Oh, I think I have some in my truck from another job." And someone else said, "No, wait, we have to make sure it's LBC approved." And so they're helping look out for each other. And so they called me up, and took me 5 minutes to find the information I needed and get them the approval. But it just really helped show the process that we had put in place was working, and that everyone could you know, was a participant and could really be proud of what we'd accomplished. But as Amber said, we did vet about 1,000 products. So we actually have material ingredients for all of those products. It is a lot of work. A lot of manufacturers don't know what's in their products, or they don't want to tell you what's in their products. As you could see, all of the equipment, especially in the basement, was very complex. There's a whole process for evaluating equipment. There are certain exceptions that ILFI has set up to be able to handle things like that. You know, the light fixtures, there's so many parts and pieces in a light fixture, and we had so many manufacturers, and then light fixtures are purchased through a third-party vendor. So it took us about 14 months just to vet the light fixtures. So as the person managing the whole materials process, I've been working on this project for nearly 5 years. So it's been a very long time coming, but huge team effort, and we're so excited to see everything actually in the building.
Thank you, Jessie. I didn't give you your proper introduction.
Oh.
So let me do that now. So this is Jessie Buckmaster with Hathaway Dinwiddie, and she is in their sustainability division. So I did skip some questions just to get through the tour. I'm sorry we're running a little bit behind. I think that had to do with technical difficulties. But the last place we're gonna go before we'll then tackle the questions is the south stairwell. And Amber will be, or actually no, this will be Miriam. So Miriam Mojidi with, I'm sorry if I butchered that, with Frederick Fisher and Partners, and she is a senior associate. And Miriam, go for it.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, the south stair, it embodies a lot of FFP's energy and design goals for the building. We located the staircase right off the south entrance, so it's an obvious choice for people who are able to use the stairs. Aside from being the most convenient mode of circulation, using the stair comes with the perk of experiencing a forthcoming biophilic art installation that will be animated by the light captured by the 3-story glass volume. The glazing in the volume, like the rest of the building, is triple silver coating glass with a ceramic frip. Here, the frip percent is about 60. And then on the 2 other sides, we've embedded within the walls the phase change material that we discussed previously. And our team worked hard to maximize building efficiency, and now the building users need to play a critical role and use these stairs to help achieve net zero energy consumption. We'll conserve energy and maintain a healthy lifestyle. And apparently, if you use stairs over the course of a year, you'll burn about 3,900 calories. So that's about a pound of weight gain. So with our COVID-19 weight, that might help. And yeah, that's
Miriam, can you share with everybody what we call these stairs?
They're irresistible stairs. So that's something that verbiage we got from ILFI. So it's the idea that it's so wonderful you would never want to use an elevator. And yeah, this whole wall here will be where eventually we'll have an art piece. Hopefully.
All right, thank you, Miriam. Anything else, or should I move to questions? Okay, I'm gonna move to questions. Somebody wanted to see, Amber, could you highlight that raw edge wood table?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we have the other raw edge wood table here. So these are tables that came from trees that were actually salvaged from Santa Monica. So our large conference table on level 1, a large conference table on level 3, and then the ones we were looking at were the 2 and the coffee bar. Those are melaleucas. So the ones here are the incense cedar. We actually had the where the tree came from, burned in. We worked with Angel City Lumber to make these happen. They did a beautiful design and picked out the tree, and we have the live edge on the inside for this one, live edge for the outside on the other one, and then the other tree I was highlighting, it's on the outside, and they just have this really rich, wonderful quality to them, and it's the city gives Angel City trees, and then they mill that and turn it into furniture and other things with them. So we've done a couple of projects with them. The courtyard will also have benches that are made out of the same tree. So it was one big giant tree that was then made into the two large tables. And the Melaleucas are a different species, but they're also a Santa Monica tree.
Thank you. I love the edging too with the name of where the tree was. Can you zoom in on that again?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna turn off.
How cool. Okay, so next question. This is about the water systems. They're asking if the city will contract out to a vendor for ongoing maintenance, or will the city be maintaining the water systems themselves?
So the city has a water resources division, right? And that water resources division is responsible for delivering clean, healthy drinking water for the whole city of Santa Monica. So they will do the same thing in this building. That water treatment center down there really is just an extension of their system. And so they are the ones responsible for doing the testing, working with the Department of Drinking Water, and making sure that everything is meeting the testing standards that they use on any of their water treatment systems. So I think as Julian and Kathleen had talked about, that it's the same process as a water treatment plant. It is just much smaller in scale. It's at a building scale instead of a municipal scale.
Thank you. And then there was one question with an answer that I'll read out loud. Will the material research or list of approved manufacturers and products be made available to the public or through ILFI? And then Jesse answered that ILFI does require projects to publish material lists, and it will be a part of the project's case study on their website once the building's certified. Just as a note, the ILFI Living Building certification is a performance-based certification program. So the building will have to run 12 to 18 months before the city is going to pursue that, that certification, achieve that certification. Okay, and then now we have another question about, where was it at? For the open office areas, were overhead ceiling fans considered as additional occupant thermal control elements?
Julian, you might answer that.
Yeah, so we did look at those, and they were on the table early on, but we moved towards the city's going to make available small desk fans for people who need them. And it was felt that that was a better way for people to have some individual control. And, the fans were, in some ways contradicted the stratification and the way the radiant wants to work. So we went in the direction of just small local desk fans.
Thank you.
Didn't they end up using too much electricity? And where are we on our design EUI now?
So I'm not, it was definitely a factor, Joe. But I think it was, there were a whole host of things around energy use, interference of radiant that really made it not the best way to go. The EUI target, we think it's going to be between 24 to 26 BTU per square foot per year, which for a building with this many people, 240 people in it, on a 50,000 square foot building, it's pretty good. It's very aggressive. I think we'll get there.
Right.
And given
Thank
the
you.
floor plate, you know, a long, narrow floor plate, you have a lot of cross ventilation achievable through the vent system itself, which
Right.
gives that extra thermal comfort.
I do want to note that it's 5:30 right now. I don't think the team minds just answering the next couple of questions. And if anybody else.
Could I say one thing just before we lose folks? I just wanted to mention sort of from the city's perspective, right? We talked a little bit about the, you know, Santa Monica being the sustainable city of well-being, right? That's our city motto. And so if one of those things that makes us unique is that our council really pushes us to do and live into that motto. And so where we've set those goals of being water neutral and those sorts of things, but it takes someone who is a champion and is a visionary to do that and to say, you know what, let's investigate what this living building challenge thing was or is, right? As Joe mentioned, right, 8+ years ago. I know, you know, the building was concepted well before that. And so having a public works director who was that visionary is amazing, and for me personally is the reason that I work here. And the fact that Santa Monica doesn't just say things, it's not just saying, oh yeah, we do this stuff and we track it and that's great, but we really do walk that walk. And so this building was one that needed to be done, as we mentioned, for those least reasons, but it could have been done in any myriad of ways. And the fact that there was someone pushing staff and making available, right, the opportunity to do something like this and to be the world's first and only at this point municipal living building challenge seeking building is really amazing. And I know a lot of folks in public works are just inspired to work here because of that vision. And I would just hope that in all, right, as we look at this Earth Day, and it is so different, but it is the 50th anniversary, and what can we do, right? This is a very big step, but there are small steps all the way along the way. And I know many of us that have worked on this for many years would be willing to talk to folks and share the knowledge. And we really want this to be something that is an education piece, not just oh great, Santa Monica, pat on the back, great, you built a living building. It really is about sharing that information and spreading it widely and finding that one thing that you can do on every project that would be in the spirit of living building and regenerative design and net zero everything. And every project isn't necessarily able to do everything, but looking, hopefully what people learned during this tour and hearing from the experts that designed and constructed this building is that it's possible. And hopefully, no matter what world looks like when we come out of this, that we will have more buildings that are having a positive effect on the environment, right? For our children, for our grandchildren, and for our fellow humans, right? For everyone. These buildings are for everyone. And we're excited that this public building is going to be able to be shared at some point with everyone. So I just wanted to state that before we got to the end, but thank you.
Yeah, so, well, we just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're going to hang out a little bit longer, but it is 5:30, so I realize some people have to jump off. So thank you so much for joining us today on USGBC-LA's first virtual tour of the world's first largest municipal green building project. And so now we're going to dive into a little bit more questions, but technically this was supposed to be the happy hour moment. So feel free to keep your speakers on, but pour yourself something. And we'll be going through a few more questions. Thank you. Okay, so there are 2 design questions. The first is, I noticed very little art on the walls. Is it a conscious choice or will it come later? And then the next is, they love the staircase, but wondering how the design decision was made to enclose it.
I think I can take the art one if someone from Frederick Fisher wants to talk about the stairwell and that piece. Yes, there will be public art. The 1% for public art is not just the pony wall that we got to see and spend some time with. There is a large installation that is still yet to be installed. There are other smaller pieces of artwork that will talk to underrepresented histories and underrepresented artists and concepts and themes. And so the reason why you see a lot of blank white walls right now is that those will get art eventually, but obviously in the time of this global pandemic, we can't have a bunch of people in the building. And so things are on a slightly longer timeline, but they will still very much be a part of the building.
Thank you.
Erin, I can answer the stair question. It's interesting, and you could combine it with, there was a ton of critical thinking where the problems you weren't able to solve. In schematic design, that stair was partially open. The idea is that it was going to naturally ventilate. There were concerns about would it be getting too how we really were going to develop the heating and cooling strategy. There were cooling concerns. As the design matured, I would say we got interested in maintaining a more taut skin, and the project eventually moved towards a enclosed stair. But for probably through schematic and maybe design development, Julian, we did have the stair open, and it was meant to be as transparent as possible. And then we ended up changing it because it was going to be putting more pressure on the mechanical system than I think we thought the EUIs could support. Now that I look at it, I feel pretty good that the stair actually is the way it is.
Thank you so much. Next question. For the open office areas, were overhead ceiling fans considered as additional occupant thermal control elements?
I think Julian
covered
that one.
Yeah, we did answer that, Erin. So we did look at them, but we rejected it in favor of desk fans.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
There's a lot of questions. Are there any street side, curbside, transportation access, and loading dock innovations that you would like to highlight?
I think one for us, I don't know, for innovation, right? There's probably lots of doing this, right? And Europe is definitely known, but we will have a lot of bike storage. And currently on site, we actually have large enough bike lockers to fit cargo bikes and have bikes with all of the things that you put on your bike. So not just that a bike fits, but that to really try and facilitate staff to be able to ride a bike to work and not have to take a bunch of stuff off and to put a bunch of stuff back on. There's actually chargers in a good percentage of them as well that are on site right now. So really trying to facilitate and bring that sort of European culture of cycling to Santa Monica would be one that I would note. I don't know if others have others.
We do have about a 4 to 4.5 foot grade change between Olympic and the entrance to the building. And we worked really closely with the city and Hathaway Dinwiddie in developing the strategy for how we were going to do that with stairs and ramping, because it's a relatively tight area. And there was a moment when we were going through Landmarks Commission acted as ARB, that would the entrance, the south entrance where Amber first started the tour of the building, be too prominent and disrespect in some way the front door of City Hall. So we were really careful to make it obvious, make it accessible, but not, I guess, celebrate it so much in a way that it diminished the original City Hall. There was many conversations about the respect of the original building within the context of the new one.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. That City Hall is a landmark building. So another question. This is a really good one. On a Living Building Challenge project, a ton of problem solving and critical thinking is required. Were there problems that you weren't able to solve, and were there problems that required creative solutions?
Well, that's kind of what I referenced earlier. The stair is a really good example of that. That process, led us to the design. Julian, could you think of anything technically? I mean, I remember moments in meetings, and Amber mentioned the leadership earlier of Susan, when, let's just say, there was pressure on scope and budget. And there were moments when we had budget challenges, yet we were up against these systems that really, because they hadn't been done before, it was hard to speculate what they, really were going to cost. Julian, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think there weren't really problems we couldn't solve. I think, like the stair, there were things that we looked at and in the end we just concluded weren't right for the project. Really thinking through maintenance impacts. We studied early on the idea of more active shading systems and just the cleaning and the maintenance. So I don't think there were any problems we couldn't solve.
Yeah.
It's just things weren't really appropriate for the building, and we worked hard on them, but they weren't the right solution.
Yeah, and I would just add, kind of as far as creative solutions, I think there's a lot of complexities, and a lot of the different requirements from the different pedals are all overlapping. And so one of the examples is the roofing system. Because we're going through the city, the county public health department, and the state department of drinking water, trying to figure out what the requirements are to be able to get that permit for rain to potable. One of the requirements, as Kathleen mentioned, is everything that touches a surface leading into the water system had to be NSF certified. For potable water standards, what that meant was the entire roof membrane needed to be NSF. But it also had to meet the red list, and we're looking at roof membranes. We can't do PVC, so we're looking at TPO. There were no roof membranes that were NSF certified at the time of design. So we started reaching out to different manufacturers, and Carlisle is the manufacturer for our TPO roof. They were actually willing to go and pay and get NSF certified for our project, so that we could meet both the red list and the water pedal and just the regulatory requirements. So it was a lot of moving parts, but we had really good communication established very early and knew all the different things that we needed to hit. So that worked out really well.
I also see with the curtain wall itself, the challenge of using a fully glazed, having a full glazed curtain wall system on a living building challenge, and integrating that frit, as well as the window systems itself, and being able to do that as a hurdle that was able to be overcome. And to do that you don't normally see on a living building challenge per se, that heat gain usually is something that would dissuade you from that. And to take those different frits to utilize that and still be able to integrate it, as well as some of the pony walls with the phase change material. So I do think there was a lot of challenges that were out there, but we overcame them and were able to actually utilize them to our advantage.
Yeah, Josh, that's a great point. The curtain wall, which was done very early on in a kind of a design assist basis with Walter Wolf and Hathaway Dinwiddie and Burrow Happold, and looking at different orientations in the building and the density of the frit, and that there's a fair amount of what looks like an all glass building is actually a certain amount of it that's vision glass, certain amount of it that's translucent, and certain amount that is what we call the shadow box. And working really closely with Burrow Happold and energy modeling, getting to the right balance of that, and the technology of the automated operable windows in a unitized system on a building which is a relatively small. There's not a lot of square footage, so we weren't able to amortize all that technology over, a much larger building. And doing that, I think, within the budget and timeline, it took a lot of the team working together to get to where we got. It's interesting how the building changes in the light. There's certain times when you barely see the frit, and there's other times, depending on the sun, where it's very prominent. Or if you noticed where Amber was walking around, you can see through the frit fairly well. And it's a fairly dense brick pattern on a good portion of the building.
Thank you, everybody. So 2 more questions that I see, and then I'm going to pass it over back to Ben Stapleton, the Executive Director of USGBC-LA, to have some final comments. The first question is, do you have any other cities reached out to inquire about doing this in their city? Amber?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Have any other cities reached out to you to inquire about doing an LBC project in their city?
We've had some interested in like pedal certification, and it's interesting, right? I have 2 predecessors, Joel and Brooke now works in San Diego, and she's actually, you know, considering doing living building projects where she is, not for a city, but for the university down there. And so, you know, one of the things that I really appreciate about this community, just green building in general, is that it's about sharing and challenging each other and trying to do better. But you know that there's always folks to go back to and learn from. So I'm so encouraged that there were a lot of folks on this webinar, because we can continue, now everyone can be ambassadors for regenerative buildings and making a positive impact going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope there are more. We would love to have those questions.
Thank you. And then any of our viewers, if you have a last minute question, now's your time to enter it. Because I'm reading what I think is the last one. Are the office or break room trash, office or break room, sorry, the sentence is a little off. Are the office or break room trash will be handled and monitored differently, or just simple recycle and go to the landfill? I think it's a net zero question. Amber, can you talk about Santa Monica's net zero program and all the city facilities and citywide?
I think until Amber unmutes, I can talk a little bit about the.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there's Amber. She can take
Sorry
it.
about that. I was going to say, I know there were some folks, at least from OSC, on the call, and they can probably speak much more eloquently than I can. But as we noted, right, we just adopted our climate adaptation and action plan in 2019. So that will set the goalposts for us. We are hopeful that we will meet a carbon neutrality by 2050, right? Another small lining of COVID is less people are driving. So air quality is actually really good in LA these days. The city, right, with our council, we just did all priorities, budget priorities and things like that in 2019, and climate action was part of that. So I don't see Santa Monica slowing down at all, but we have our sustainable water infrastructure project that is coming on that'll take 10% of our sewage out of those from going to Hyperion and getting treated, and treat that up to a standard that we can then discharge safely into the ocean. And then we've got to meet that water neutrality goal of 2023 means we're self-sufficient and we're not bringing water in from Colorado and those other water sources, right, middle of the state, and those sorts of things, and the carbon associated with that energy water nexus. So we're trying to hit it from a lot of different sides, as well as, right, our municipal code. We have reach codes and things like that that are continuing to push on water neutrality in our residential as well as commercial projects. So we're trying to hit it from many sides. So hopefully we'll get there sooner than anticipated. But please, Kathleen, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that for a living building challenge, part of the materials pedal is waste, and Jesse and Josh were talking about it, that they had to hit, you know, incredibly high construction waste diversion rates, which included, you know, the demolition and, you know, salvaging existing materials that were on site before the new construction. And we have to create a part of the documentation is that you have to provide a plan that talks about, you know, how the different portions of the building relate to zero waste for zero waste goals. So everything from operational waste like composting, recycling, reducing landfill, sustainable purchasing policy, but also in the decisions that you know, Joe and Miriam and team were making. Like you notice that Amber had pointed out that there's you know, a lot of reduced finishes in this project. You know, like there's concrete columns that normally would get finished with like chipboard or something, but and thinking about circular economy, zero waste, and how we meet the red list, or even the examples of those amazing wood tables, right? All of those are made out of healthy and a lot of the times natural building materials, which we've moved so far away from. But they also help us with our zero waste goals, circular economy. So I think one really interesting thing about the problem solving aspect of this project is that not that you're forced to make certain decisions, but you know, biophilic design, doing the right thing in terms of daylight, energy, choosing the right finishes that aren't going to, you know, cause harm to people's health. All those decisions kind of get made for you, and you have to start moving towards back to what makes sense in terms of doing right by people and doing right by nature. And you can connect something as abstract as zero waste to that. So I think that was super illuminating to be as part of that project team that, you know, saw this kind of as a holistic process where every decision you're making affects something else in the project in terms of meeting living building challenge. So that was really great.
Thank you so much. And I did realize I skipped one question. Were there any people within the city or the public that threw roadblocks up, and were they worried about being the first building of its kind in Southern California? Amber, I don't know if you want to take that, or maybe Julian with water, or one of you.
I think, you know, the process.
I will.
We'll do Julian and then we'll go to Joe.
Okay. The process for permitting was very rigorous, but I think that rigor is really important when you're doing things for the first time. You know, there's certain things that we had to do on the composting toilet systems that maybe weren't done in other states and other jurisdictions. But I think when you're doing this on a public building and for the first time in somewhere like LA County, you need to make sure that you're putting public health first. So I think there was definitely a lot of rigor through the permitting process that was extremely painful to go through at the time. But I think the ultimate end product is you know, something that will then hopefully allow other jurisdictions to take this on and do the same thing.
Yeah, I would agree with Julian that it was a very rigorous process, and I think when you're on the bleeding edge, a certain amount of the technology, the rain to potable, the water treatment portion of that, you know, the composting toilets. There was a lot of conversation about how we would get through the process and ultimately the engineering solution. I think, Julian, you would agree there were moments when we kind of questioned, and now I wonder maybe it wasn't a bad idea that some of the, you know, the belt and suspenders, the things that we did, because you know, we want to make sure that the building performs in you know, in years to come. So it was a extraordinary process, and the city was very patient, I think, as we were going through it. In some ways, they were harder on themselves than I've seen. We do a fair amount of work in Santa Monica. It was very rigorous. Nothing got taken care of because it was a Santa Monica project. It almost had a more rigorous review than for a private developer, I'd say.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to add one thing. A story that I really love about this project, really early on, when Joel was still involved, the city actually flew some of their code officials up to Seattle to visit the Bullitt Center, which is one of the first living buildings, and it's the headquarters for ILFI. And their code officials actually got to meet with code officials there, where they had composting toilets and they had a lot of, not the same, but some similar systems. And again, a different city, different state, different jurisdiction. But I think it really helped create some familiarity and some comfort with, you know, maybe we're the first in Southern California, the first in California, but not necessarily the first in the world. And for jurisdictional approvals, I think that was really helpful.
All right. So thanks everybody. We're gonna now transition back to Ben. Thank you for joining us. This has been so great. Thanks for the love as well on chat. Goodbye.
You know, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the entire project team, and a specific thank you to Amber and Aaron for all their hard work in putting this together. This is really a fantastic tour. This is a format we're going to be doing more in the coming weeks. We're working on several tours for the next month and then for June as well. Hopefully everyone enjoyed this experience today, and it'll only get better with time. And we just encourage you to check out some of our upcoming webinars. We have webinars coming up in the next month on Cal Green and Title 24. Our Leading Ladies web series will be back with an episode on construction. And we have a true zero waste and circular economy overview in May. And then if you go to the next slide, want to make sure folks are aware of our talent portal that we recently launched. It can be accessed through our website at usgbc-la.org/talent. We really want to make this a centralized hub for the region. We post jobs there, we feature employers, we have a mentorship network that we're launching, and again, you can get access to all of our upcoming training and webinar content or request specific training for your group. And more to come here. Be on the lookout. We're going to be continuing to upgrade our talent portal over time. And then another way to engage with us is really through our committees. So we have 7 committees. These all meet monthly. We have a group that's focused on advocacy. We have an emerging professionals group. Our Women in Green group has a happy hour tomorrow. Our Building Decarb group typically has around 30 or so attendees at each meeting. A lot of great work happening there. And then in August, we moved our MGBCE this year to downtown LA. What is MGBC besides the worst name for a conference ever? It is our Municipal Green Building Conference and Expo. Believe it or not, this is actually our 19th year, and it's the first year we're moving into downtown. Because of the uncertainty surrounding COVID-19, we're actually going to be doing it virtually and in person this year. So there's an opportunity to submit for workshops still. We're going to have some great TED Talk style speakers. And we've also added a community green day. So we really want to engage the community in the green building conversation. That's going to be on Saturday. And we're going to have workshops on things like composting, electrification for your home. And just as you saw today with a tour of over 200 people attending virtually, we actually think we might be able to engage a lot of people in this conversation and educate them about what they can do in their home to engage in the green building conversation. And then lastly, just want to thank our sponsors. We can't provide this kind of content without their support. So really appreciate all the organizations listed here who help make this happen. And thank you everyone for your time today. I think we're wrapping up just on time. I never actually ended up getting a glass of wine or a beer for myself, so I'm a little dismayed, but it's not quite too late. And just want to say that today's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Let's see if we can create a much more well-positioned world for the future 50 years from now. So that's the work we have ahead for us. And thank you for your time. Great job, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.